Hello, this is Dr. Grande. Today's question is, can I analyze the case of Marie Sophia Hingst? Just a reminder, I'm not diagnosing anybody in this video, only speculating about what could be happening in a situation like this. If you enjoy this video, please like it, subscribe to my channel, and consider supporting me on Patreon. I will put the link to Patreon in the description for this video. First, I'll look at the background of this case, then I'll move to my analysis. Marie Sophia Hingst was born in Wittenberg, Germany, on October 20, 1987. She went by the name Sophie. She graduated from high school and went to college in a few different places, including Berlin, Germany, Lyon, France, and Los Angeles, California. She earned a degree in early modern history. In 2013, Sophie moved to Dublin, Ireland, and started working on her doctoral thesis at Trinity College. Sophie also took a job as a project manager for the technology company Intel and volunteered with the Irish Red Cross. In 2017, she presented her doctoral thesis and earned her PhD. Her thesis was on English colonial strategies in Ireland from 1603 to 1680, which proves that just about anything can be interesting to some people. I found the thesis online. It is 275 pages. I read about 15 pages, including the conclusion. It appears to be fairly well written. The part I don't understand about Sophie's career is how her PhD was connected to her job at Intel. I can picture some executive in a boardroom yelling at company recruiters. It's great that we're making millions of dollars with all these IT majors, but we really need to hire someone who understands 17th century Irish history. That's the secret to growth in the microprocessor business. In 2013, years before Sophie earned her PhD, she started a blog titled Read On, My Dear, Read On. In addition to other elements, it featured a number of short stories where she fabricated a family history. She promoted these stories in other ways as well, including during interviews and in essays. Sophie said that she was Jewish and a descendant of Holocaust victims. In reality, she was Protestant, and none of her family members were victims of the Holocaust. She reported 22 alleged relatives to an Israeli Holocaust memorial. Only 3 of the people were real. They were not Jewish, and they had not been murdered. Sophie offered detailed backstories for her relatives, but she had made some statements that were impossible. For example, she said that one family member had been killed in Auschwitz before that camp was operating. Sophie offered little extra personal details to some of her stories in an effort to convince people that the narratives must be true. For example, she said that when she was young, she would attend an annual summer garden party for Holocaust survivors at her grandmother's house, and she didn't like it because she always had to wear a skirt. Not all of Sophie's stories were related to her ancestry. For example, she had a story about a project in India which was difficult to believe. Sophie said that when she was 19 years old, she traveled to a slum in New Delhi, India, and provided sex education for young men. Her narrative was inconsistent. At one point, she said that she founded her own clinic to provide this education, and on another occasion, she said that she worked in an existing hospital. In 2017, she claimed that she brought her sex education program to a small German town. There she taught men how to appropriately interact with women. There is no evidence that any of these stories are true. In May of 2019, a reporter from the German news website Der Spiegel interviewed Sophie. She asked the reporter to exclude questions about her Jewish family history. The reporter asked those questions anyway. Sophie became angry and said that no matter what the documents indicated, she was aware of the truth. She appeared to back away from her position a little bit, saying that she was only repeating what her grandmother told her. After an hour, she left the interview without saying goodbye. The next day, she called the reporter and apologized. She revealed that she made mistakes, and many of her statements were false. Her lawyer released a statement on Sophie's behalf, saying that she employed a considerable amount of artistic freedom in her blog. Her writing was literature, not journalism or history. Her lawyer went on to say that Sophie did not lie in articles about her family history Rather, she presented information from the estate of her grandmother. Sophie did not personally vet the data. In June of 2019, Der Spiegel released an article about Sophie, which detailed her fraudulent claims. After this, Sophie spoke to a reporter for the Irish Times. Here are a few things that she told that reporter. The article published in Der Spiegel was about a publishing house hanging someone out on a fence to dry. Life as she knew it evaporated in 6 days, and she felt ambushed by the German reporter, as if he was a bounty hunter. The reporter from the Irish Times felt as though Sophie had mental health symptoms. Sophie was agitated and moved back and forth from playful to angry. He initially intended to publish a story about her, but decided against it in light of the potential mental illness. The reporter found out that Sophie's employer, Intel, decided not to fire her, but required that she attend sessions with a mental health counselor who worked for the company. Sophie may have been relieved by this, but she was disturbed by a Wikipedia entry which referred to her as a fraudster. On July 17, 2019, 31-year-old Sophie was found dead in her apartment in Dublin, Ireland. The cause of death was never released, but the police ruled out external negligence. It seems fairly likely that Sophie brought an end to her own life. Now moving to my analysis. Here are my thoughts on a few items that stood out to me in this case. Item number 1, what mental health and personality factors were at work with Sophie? Let's take a look at some of the clues in this case. Sophie was clearly exceptionally intelligent and had the ability to organize complex material. Her writing skills were phenomenal. Sophie said that she was lonely when she moved to Ireland, which may indicate that she was having some trouble socially. Sophie perpetrated a complex and long-lasting hoax. She was able to get away with it for 6 years. She offered detailed backstories for fictitious relatives and for her actual relatives. Sophie lied about the sex education program. She did not enjoy any financial gain or other tangible benefit from her fraud. Sophie's mother said that my daughter has many realities and I only have access to one. Her daughter struggled with mental health illness and repeatedly received mental health counseling. The reporter for the Irish Times noticed Sophie's mood swings and suggested that she was agitated. Sophie accused people who were trying to hold her accountable as perpetrating attacks against her and promoting conspiracy theories. She accused one person who made a comment on her blog of promoting outrageous slander. As far as mental disorders, there's no report available about what was going on with Sophie. Some have argued that she may have had delusions, but I don't think the evidence supports that. She was functional enough to earn a PhD and work full-time, so it seems unlikely she had a disorder related to reality testing. She did not appear to have hallucinations or delusions. In addition, Sophie was aware that she was lying. She admitted to her deception. If she was delusional, she would have believed the story that she was telling. Delusions are fixed, false beliefs, so there would be no acknowledgement of deception. Sophie appeared to have symptoms of depression. She mentioned being lonely, and of course the way her life concluded indicates depression. It is possible that Sophie had extreme personality traits, perhaps narcissistic and borderline traits. Sophie was deceptive, manipulative, self-centered, entitled, had an identity disturbance, and she had a strong desire to be recognized as special. Over time, she escalated her deceptive behavior to the point where she was trying to get her story officially recognized. This wasn't like a story she only presented to her friends. In addition, Sophie added the sex education story seemingly out of nowhere. These behaviors may indicate that her need for admiration was growing, like she was trying to protect her ego, but she was losing the battle. As far as a personality profile, Sophie was high in openness to experience. She was creative and invested in fantasy. She had high conscientiousness. She was able to complete a 275-page thesis. She had mid-range extroversion, lower than average agreeableness, and high neuroticism. She was depressed and angry. Item number 2. The two different reactions from the reporters involved in this case have led to an ethical debate about reporting stories like this. Was the reporter for Der Spiegel justified in writing the article, or was his behavior cruel? He argued that when he spoke to Sophie, there was no sign of mental illness. Rather, she was argumentative and confident. It was only after her lies were exposed that the other reporter detected that something was wrong. Here's how I look at this. Not every story about a person who lies is interesting to the public or otherwise newsworthy. Reporters typically apply certain criteria in order to determine if a story is newsworthy. Let's take a look at some of the criteria that media outlets tend to use when it comes to reporting people who perpetrate hoaxes, and see how Sophie's behavior aligns with those criteria. Number 1, the person making the claim is famous or popular. Sophie was certainly popular. Her blog had 240,000 regular readers. Number 2, the person making the false claims is an expert in some area. In this case, Sophie had a PhD and held herself out as an historian. She took a big risk by mixing her lies with her profession. Number 3, the claims are bizarre. Certainly the claims that Sophie made about the sex education program were bizarre. It really makes no sense why someone would say they started a program like that when they had no experience in that area. It's like she was claiming she was an expert on sex or relationships. Number 4, the hoax causes harm to other people. I think one could make an argument that falsely claiming a connection to victims of the Holocaust harms people. I don't think that Sophie meant to harm anybody, but she should have known what she was doing was reckless. Number 5, the deception is intentional. Sophie knew that she was lying. It would be different if she was in some type of delusional state and clearly had no idea what she was saying. Number 6, the lie is plausible and specific. Sophie worked very diligently to create stories that were believable. It took a real effort to find the inconsistencies. It wasn't a situation where she was saying something like the CIA was using satellite-mounted lasers to transform her into an aardvark, or she was receiving messages from an alien military commander through the TV when she was watching Dancing with the Stars. The family history stories that Sophie was telling were highly plausible and specific. Her story about the sex education program was not. When weighing all these factors, I'm not surprised that the media reported the story, and I think it was newsworthy. I don't think the media was actually the problem here. I think the problem was that Sophie was narcissistic and not getting effective mental health treatment. Item number 3, why did Sophie select the Holocaust as the topic for her deception? Sophie clearly had an interest in history, and I think she was able to get lost in historical narratives, like she could envision herself as part of history. At some point, Sophie must have been influenced strongly by stories of the Holocaust. I think she was probably moved by the stories of tragedy, like she had compassion for the victims. She wanted people to have that same compassion for her, but clearly she was too young to be a victim of the Holocaust directly. Therefore, she fabricated the stories about relatives who died in the Holocaust. She used her creativity to add all the details needed to make her story believable. Sophie felt special, being connected to something so terrible and well recognized. Item number 4, why did Sophie have such a strong reaction to being discovered as a fraud? Narcissists rarely have a backup plan, because having one would imply that they had the potential to fail. I don't think Sophie ever imagined she could get caught. Even if somebody did notice something wrong with her story, she could simply pivot to the position that she never checked out the information. So it wasn't really her fault. Or it was artistic license. She was just being creative. Furthermore, Sophie not only had to deal with the loss of her reputation, she had to deal with the collapse of the story that was protecting her for so many years. The identity that she created was now shattered. In her mind, it was worse than moving from special for a good reason to not special. Now she was special for a bad reason. This was a new identity that she was not willing to accept. Now moving to my final thoughts. One of the many tragedies of this story is that Sophie had this intense need to feel special, when in reality, one could argue that she was already special. She had a number of impressive talents and accomplishments, but this wasn't enough for Sophie. She needed to have a background which was equally as intriguing. Therefore, she attempted to rewrite history. Those are my thoughts on Marie Sophia Hingst. Please put any opinions and thoughts in the comment section. They always generate an interesting dialogue. As always, I hope you found my analysis of this topic to be informative. Thanks for watching.